Well, good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. We're back on the air after a break of 2 weeks. Many of you will know, many of you perhaps won't know, but it was off air. We had a bereavement in our family, and I thought it was just respectful to not go on air during that period of time. I'm very grateful and thankful also to my friend and colleague tonight, Keith Hackett, for his indulgence over the last couple of weeks that we were off air as well. But we're back on again, and I'd like to hear your comments. If you have any comments to make about anything, please at all times be respectful of the show and our guest, and but do make your comments and ask questions if that's your choice as well. As usual, we talk refereeing and refereeing issues. We try not to be um, too critical of referees. Keith and I have been there. We know what it's like. We would be the last ones to criticize match officials, knowing the difficulty of being a match official, of being out there in the middle and getting plenty of criticism from fans and whatever. So we would be very critical. At the same time, we must point out if mistakes are made because people
Mm.
will ask, why was that mistake made? And we'll also be accused of protecting referees too much. That's not our job or our intention either. If they make mistakes, they make mistakes, and we have to, and we will endeavor to explain why they um, why they made that mistake and how to correct it. But I do want to go back because the last time we were on air, we were talking about the Liverpool goal that was disallowed. Now, there have been many, many, many comments and suggestions as to what could and should happen. Could the game be, literally from, could the game be replayed? Could you play the portion of the game from the time the incident happened? I'm talking about the Liverpool goal that was disallowed by VAR and all the shenanigans that went on surrounding that. Now, um, of course, when a referee, when he restarts the game, then whatever mistake was made, that's it. He can't go any further. My contention, and I'm going to ask Keith to have a quick comment on this as well. If the referee restarts the game, then he can't go back. But then my question is, what happens with a red card that's rescinded on a Monday morning, perhaps 48 hours after it was issued? Now, is the referee's decision final or is it not final? Is it final only until there's a revision on a Monday? Heath, good evening and
Yeah,
welcome, and thank you very much for your indulgence over the last couple of weeks.
pleasure. You know, I look very closely at that one because I think, first of all, I will continue to say there's always in refereeing law 18,
Yeah,
and that is common sense.
of course.
But then I thought, well, I'll have a little, I'll have a little look a bit further, and I look very closely at the VAR protocol because we were in a process here where a goal had been chalked off incorrectly because of a VAR error. And so here is the protocol that I believe gave the VAR operator and the match officials the opportunity to stop the game and go back and rectify the error. The, the, the principles of VAR state the use in VAR in football matches is based on a number of principles, all of which must apply in every match using VAR. A video assistant referee is a match official with independent access to match footage who may assist the referee only in the event of a clear and obvious error or a serious missed incident. So if we have an error
Yeah,
and a goal that should have been allowed has not been allowed, then I believe that under the VAR protocol of a serious missed incident, that VAR operator could have come in and said, stop the game, let's go back and get the correct decision, because this is a miscommunication. I mean, I think we said before, when we on this show Errol, when we listened in to that VAR broadcast, I think we were both rather alarmed about what was being said, how it was being communicated, and a total and utter lack of clarity. And I can't believe we're in the 5th year of VAR. And sadly, it's not the technology, it's the individuals. And sadly, and I say it about colleagues, they're making themselves look foolish because of their poor level of competence. So there you are. I think VAR should have said, referee, stop the game. Rather than hesitate, stop it. The ball was in midfield. There wasn't a goal. There wasn't a throw-in. There wasn't a red card or whatever. Stop the game. Say to the referee, the game's restarted incorrectly. That's a missed incident. The goal should have been allowed.
Just want to tease this out of it, Keith. So they suddenly realize he disallows the goal and they play on. Now, he has restarted the game. So can he then, having restarted the game, go back and say, hold on a minute, guys, I'm allowing that goal, and now we start with a drop ball?
Well, here we are. We're basically in local park football as against elite refereeing football, where goals cost huge amounts of money.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, we look at it and we just say, look, okay, you've made a mistake. Why have you made that mistake? Why have you lost concentration? Why are VAR operators continually making errors? Now, okay, some decisions are subjective and they think, well, that's not clear and obvious. But for me, if you've allowed a goal, or should I say disallowed a goal that is perfectly correct, then for me, using VAR protocol, I can't use that in the local parks at grassroots level, but I can at the elite level. And I've got everything in front of me to say the game started incorrectly. The guy, they lost composure. Totally. But, you know, we're all, as referees, get into very hot situations.
Yeah.
And what we have to do, and young referees, when they suddenly go, cracky, what have I done here? Take a deep breath. Buy yourself some time. And this is exactly what VAR should have done. It should have gone, instead of panicking, it was the administrator, the guy who uses the equipment, who actually was the guy who's saying, look, it's wrong. You know, he's not a referee. He's a technician. And he recognized what should have been done. And it was the VAR, Darren England, who came in and made a pig's ear of it. And the referee oblivious to it all. So I'm informed. I mean, it beggars belief. You know, I mean, when you actually look at the games and the amount of money involved, and, you know, yes, referees, all of us have made errors, will continue to make errors. But so I think we've got an electronic system in VAR that should enhance the accuracy of the decision-making process.
So just for clarification,
Yes.
when a red card is rescinded on a Monday morning, who are the people who rescind that?
Right. What happens is the referee pushes in his report, and then what you have is the Football Association have now introduced a regulatory panel, and that panel is made up of maybe two players, or a player and a manager and a referee. And they sit in judgment and they go, no. So, you know, I mean, look, what a mess.
Could the same not be said then for this disallowed goal, that they'd sit and say that goal should have been allowed, and now we'll give it back to Liverpool, as it were? And I'm not a fan one way or the other. I'm just want to see, because
well,
I
I think what we have to understand very clearly is that FIFA and the IFAB in this process, their hate of re-refereeing football matches is something that is always a keen focus. Do not re-referee the games. But with VAR protocol, it was supposed to stop the need to have this level of error. But I guess, we'll continue to have that error. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I felt very disappointed and sad for Darren England, the VAR operator, because he certainly went into panic mode, no question. He could see that he'd made an error. I think he could have shouted and stopped the game. Sometimes common sense has to come into play. There are times when we look at a situation and we think there might be an element of doubt here. We're not going to go with our first gut feel. We're just going to temper it a little bit. And I just think that's what he could have done. The fact that then Howard Webb came out and said, well, he's not going to be appointed to the next game. I used to do that, but I used to have a caveat. I used to say he will not be officiating in the coming days because he will receive appropriate operational advice and support. When you, as a young referee, and he is a young guy, when you're at the Premier League level and you make a major error, then it can dwell for an awful long time. So what you've got to do is work with the sports psychologist, work with the individual, examine why the error was made. And, I go back to the basics. I think the criteria of conversation between VAR and referee is too pally, unspecific, and therefore I faced that problem when I was boss of the PGMOL, when I first introduced the communication kits. I listened in, and I got linesmen trying to referee the matches. I got referees trying to give it to the assistant referees.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down with them and work with the referees and the assistant referees, not lecture to them, work with them to say, look, before we leave this room, we're going to have a very clear protocol. We're all going to abide by that protocol. And basically, one of the reasons we learned from those debates was when I came to goal line technology, my brief and criteria to Hawkeye was to say, I don't want any, it might be, it is, or whatever. I just want goal.
Yeah.
And of course, it's done automatic. So I think I listened in, and you got this, there's two players holding each other near the halfway line. Play's continuing, it's in the penalty area, whoa, 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 and you go. I mean, the one saving grace this weekend, and I smiled, was that in the Newcastle Crystal Palace game, a goal was scored. The linesman raised the flag offside. We couldn't hear what was being said, which I always think is a negative. The line appeared, the player was onside, the goal was allowed. It was a simple, dynamic process, and you say, that is how VAR should be used.
So then, just to finally finish with this issue now, was there any explanation as to why the lines did not appear on the screen?
No. I mean, I think, again, I
would have solved the problem.
I think that what happens is we made a big error. We've put it all on the VAR operator, and in fairness, they sanctioned the assistant referee, the AVAR, the second guy. But no, and I mean, you suddenly go, I'm watching cricket, the World Cup. I'm watching rugby in the World Cup. I'm listening to the very clear communication. I'm listening how in rugby the referees speak to the players with respect. I hear the players. I mean, in a game, I think it was the England game. A player said something out of turn, and the referee advanced it 10 yards.
Yeah,
He
I think it
still
was Owen Farrell, in
continued,
fact.
and
It
he
was Owen
advanced it a
Farrell.
further 10 yards.
Yeah.
And you're suddenly going, we had that in football.
Yeah. So just on that, Keith,
Yeah.
why was that done away with?
Because, right, we experimented, and it worked brilliantly. Honestly, it worked brilliantly. Then what happened
Just
was,
before you continue, Keith,
yeah,
how many more 10 yards, hypothetically? How many
Well,
more?
I
10
mean,
yards all the way into the penalty area.
Well, effectively, we could get into the area under that remit. But what happened was FIFA had a reluctance initially, and then the IFAB introduced it as an experiment, a continuing experiment. But a caveat that they put in was that the player would be cautioned as well as the advance. And of course, then what happens is the caution and the advance didn't marry. So you got a reduction in its use by match officials because they didn't want a caution. And you had that double caution. But so it got binned. All they had to do was keep the original, and that is advance it. Yeah.
Because, and of course, well, for the most part, it would be an indirect free kick for dissent and so on. And if it went into the penalty area, it would not be a penalty unless there was foul and abusive language and something that deserved a red card, which would have resulted in a direct free kick. But if that happened 5 yards outside the penalty area, you would assume then if it's a direct free kick, when you go into the penalty area, the 10 yards, becomes a penalty kick.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, I think the referees are really, really gone soft. They are so scared now with perhaps VAR wasn't such a good idea. Perhaps it's scaring them now that they're not prepared.
My view is I think it's making them lazy.
Even Craig Pawson on Saturday in the Liverpool game, he didn't give a penalty, even though the arm was way outstretched and the player made no attempt to take his arm away.
Yeah.
He still didn't give a penalty. He still had to hear, and he still had to go to the monitor. Now, that to me is lacking in guts and backbone.
Well, I mean, I'm
sorry, I don't mean any offense to Craig Pawson. No. I know it's a difficult job, but really, they really need to start to buck up and start doing their job.
I've been saying it for several months now that Craig has become lazy in his decision-making process. He's looking for the VAR intervention before it actually happens. And if we look at, he was given the Liverpool-Everton game. It's always a testing match.
Sure.
He was faced with a challenge by Ashley Young. He saw that on the left-hand side of the penalty area. He was in a good position, in fairness to him, and he issued a yellow card. And then later on, Ashley Young committed another foul. He brought the player down. It was a promising attack. It was a nailed-on yellow card. They were both nailed on, and Ashley Young correctly got sent off. In that same match, Liverpool's Konate was also cautioned correctly, a yellow card, for a reckless challenge. And then what was in front of the referee, and clear foul, a clear second yellow, and he doesn't give it. And I mean, simply, if I was his boss, I would be announcing that he wouldn't be having a game next week and probably the week after, and he'd be having some operational advice, because I think that what is lacking at this minute in time is a management process that I thought Howard Webb would deliver. Guidance, coaching. I don't think we've got a good coaching setup. I think we're seeing repeat problems. One week it's one referee, another week it's another referee. For heaven's sake, get these guys in a room, play these video clips, and say to them, we're not going out of this room until all of you understand fully, given a similar situation in next week or the week after's fixtures, this is the course of action you will take. And I think, likewise, you've got to get hold of some of the younger referees and even the older referees, give them a size 10 boot up the rear if they're losing. But look, these are employees and they're getting a fair salary, round about 100K. They're not delivering. If they're not delivering, then they have to move on. But on the positive side, Sam Barrett refereed Forest v Luton, his second Premier League game in about 3 or 4 weeks. And I thought he had a good game. So at least there appears to be one young referee and another Josh Smith coming through the ranks to challenge these guys who are not doing the job,
But are they challengers, and who will decide if they are challengers or not? I mean, they're at the mercy of the person who's making the appointments.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm confused because clearly when I took that role on as general manager, that was my first task. I said to everybody, it's my reputation. I'm going to be making the appointments. If you've anything to say, i.e. my coaching staff, come in. But these are and I used to publish those every week, very clearly. I can't remember when somebody said, look, you can't do that. I think the one occasion was when Mark Halsey in the opening game of the season at Everton Arsenal had a super game. I appointed him, and my PA came in and said, you can't appoint Mark to next week's game. And I've gone, why not? And at that point, she told me he had been diagnosed with cancer and he was going in for an operation. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how, if you like, it's so important. I mean, at the moment, I don't know who's running the show. I thought when Howard came in, we would see some dynamic changes. Those are not those are not taking place. I think I just get the impression it's John Moss. It's John Moss.
Yeah, it's a big disappointment also to me because Howard was appointed around January or so. So he had a 6-month lead in before Mike Riley left. He had time to get his feet under the table. And I mean, he announced he was going to visit have meetings with the League Managers Association. He was going to go to the clubs, et cetera, et cetera. But I was expecting great things. I was expecting referees to be stronger. Now they are cautioning players for tipping the ball away or silly little things, but not dealing with the major things. And it's not a Webb per se, but at the end of the day, if he's at the helm,
I mean, I think that I think you're always best to take small bites, not big chunks, when you're changing in change management. And I think that we saw 44 yellow cards in one weekend, a record. 14 yellow cards in one game. Where is the management? Where is the proactive management that prevents? Where is the communication that advises, that calms situations when they arise? And, I mean, this weekend, I can't remember the game, I saw an absolute blatant dive by way of the player claiming he'd been hit on the head, forcing the referee to stop the game because this player was down rubbing his head. And I listened to a very experienced player in Jamie Carragher going absolutely over the top in a sense because he witnessed an act of cheating and it wasn't in his mentality. And I'm thinking, this is also tarnishing the image of the game and making life difficult. So I'm trying to put some balance into the debate. You know, I think we need to look at our cautioning technique. We've said it before. We've discussed in this program. Just shooting a yellow card in the air, and it could be the ice cream seller if it was the middle of summer, or the hot dog salesman. There's no calming influence, and I just feel, yeah, I think you must sense my frustration, because, you know, I want referees to excel. I want referees to actually, at the Premier League level, to set the standard around the world. And at the moment, I'm not seeing, in the period of departure of Mike Riley, the introduction of Howard Webb, I'm genuinely not seeing any leadership that these referees require, and some pretty tough decisions. You know, take ownership of the big decisions.
Yeah.
If the coaching team's not delivering, and I suspect it isn't. I mean, I'm listening to very experienced managers who are not involved in the game now, but other than commentating, who are actually saying, what are referees about here? What are they doing? And yet, I'll go and watch a young referee in the park, refereeing one of our teams at Penistone Church, and I'm thinking, he's got great potential. Who's going to take him under their wing? Who's going to guide that individual to become an outstanding referee? You know, I mean, we're fortunate with some referees that they do accept a mentor and the mentor scheme and all that goes with it. But there's too many referees at the moment not getting the support, in my opinion, at grassroots level to be able to accelerate their career through to the top level. And I think there are some referees on the Premier League who are not delivering. They're lazy.
100%, Keith. And I often wonder what the procedure and what the production line, if you like, is like from young referee in the park to Premier League. There has to be surely a ladder that they have to climb. And then the people who are appointing them, do they know what they're doing? And is there anyone to assess that? Is there a chief assessor that will assess the assessors to make sure that they are doing what they should be doing? Or is there favoritism perhaps going on?
I'm a firm believer in assessment scheme and 100% assessment.
Too.
And when Mike Riley binned that idea and decided that he'd go on a tick box system, then it started the real rolling for me, saying, well, you know, I look back in my career as a referee, I think I'd come off having a good game, and knock on the door, and in might walk Pat Partridge or Jack Taylor, and then, you know, they'd go, right, I'm happy with your performance. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. You know, I can remember George McCabe coming in, and this was a grassroots game, and he came in and said to me, Keith, you really are outstanding. However, I've got a little tip for you. Go on, I said. I'll willingly accept it. And it stays with me to this day, because he said, Keith, when you're refereeing, you're watching the ball. And I want to tell you, the ball never committed an offence. Players commit an offence.
Good point.
Players commit an offence. Will you stop looking at the ball and look at the players?
Good point.
And I walked away, and I thought, wow. And that's a comment that I pass on to young referees, because quite often when I view the youngsters coming through, they get very close to play, and all they can see in their vision is waist downwards.
Yeah.
And I say to them, there's a point at which you can be too close and you are missing upper body fouls because you're concentrating on the foot area and nothing's taking place, but fouls are taking place and you're missing them. And I think those levels of advice that you received and I received as an assessor You know, I can remember being at Bury on one occasion. The game wasn't going well for me, and I really wasn't happy. And I decided to go to the toilet. Urinal out. I mean, you didn't have one in the dressing room, believe it or not.
I know.
So I had to go outside, and I stood there facing the wall. And this guy said, "Difficult match, Mr. Hackett." And I go, "More than difficult. It's challenging. You do your job, as you are doing, and you get my 100% support." And he went, "Dagnall, assessor," and walked out. It was Ken Dagnall, international FIFA referee. And I went on to that second half, re-energized, because a referee of his quality had actually said, "Look, it's not as bad as it looks. Just keep doing what you're doing, even though it's challenging." And I came off, and he came into he wasn't allowed in the dressing room then. They weren't allowed at that time to actually say who they were. So when I became the PJ Malal boss, it was totally and utterly transparent. Match assessor in before the game, chatting, listening to the pre-match instructions, and then reviewing the performance and discussing it in detail with the referee.
As always, Keith, pleasure having you on, and thank
Pleasure.
you very, very much, and for your indulgence over the last couple of weeks. We'll do it all again next week.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Look
very
forward
much.
to that. Thanks.
And to all of you, good night and God bless. Thank you.